Okay. Now, I have sent out the practice files that we're going to need for this session. Two PDF files they call Primavera Risk Analysis. I think one is a Primavera Risk Register. So lesson 5 and lesson 6. Now you may be asking, but where are lessons 1 to 4? Now the reason I don't show you lessons 1 to 4 is because they are designed for basic understanding of how to create a plan from scratch in Primavera. But once we start working with it, you will see that you already know how to do that. Because the user interface of Primavera Risk Analysis is similar to Microsoft Project, and we can compare those as we go in what we're doing here. And I know for a fact we wouldn't have time to go to the risk analysis part if I wanted to cover lessons 1 to 4. So don't worry about it. You're not going to miss anything really, because you already know that. I know even those who are in PJM 5900 have started to work with Microsoft Project, so you know how to enter data, how to create a hierarchy of deliverables, sub-deliverables, work packages, and project activities. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my screen with you, and I am going to go as slow as I can. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to invite you to open lesson 5. That's the PDF file that I sent you. And if you don't have it, please let Sarah or the NPM team know. They will be able to share that I sent, or anyone will be able to share it in the chat, because I'm sure most of you have the file. So for the quality of video and recording, I'm going to turn off my camera for a moment. So the file we're looking for is Project Risk Analysis Analytics Workshop 2001-2002. That's the PDF file we need. So lesson 5, if I'm waiting for you to open your file, the best thing to do is to save the file in a place where you can find them very easily on your computer. In my case, I save my files on my desktop because it's easily accessible. So what I'm going to ask you is to open the file with lesson 5. Now, what are we going to learn from the first part of the workshop? I'm going to show you how to import a Microsoft Project Performance Measurement Baseline into Primavera Risk Analysis. So instead of entering data manually, we're going to enter most of our data by importing data we already have. I know many of you attended the first workshop, the workshop on Microsoft Project. We're going to use the same file, except we're going to use the file in Primavera Risk Analysis. So we will develop a probabilistic model for a project, and we're going to learn all about it. We will calculate the chance of completing a project on time and budget, given that there is uncertainty in the project activity durations and cost baseline. The other things we will do, we will determine a realistic completion date for a project. We will identify project activities that are likely to cause a project to be delayed, improving the effectiveness of the project team. And finally, we will display the P50 and P80 schedule and cost. What does that mean? It means we are going to look into the probability of completing a project on a certain time, and at a certain cost. We talk about P50 and P80, that's 50% probability and 80% probability. So now many of you may not have access to Microsoft Project, but I know you have access to Primavera Risk Analysis. So what I'm going to do, I am going to show you how to import the data from Microsoft Project. If you don't have Microsoft Project, don't worry about it, because I have another way to have you open the file. So don't worry about it at all. But if so, opening a Microsoft Project file in Primavera Risk Analysis is a process. The first step of the process is to ensure that you have a complete performance measurements baseline in Microsoft Project saved on your computer. And this is why I give you the two Microsoft Project files that I give you. And I'm going to close this. The first one is Alexis J CPS plant, prior workshop. And the second one is Alexis J software development. Now, these two files are Microsoft Project files, and I'm going to import the first one into Microsoft Project to start. What do I need to do before I import the file? I just want to make sure that the performance baseline is complete, and I have, since a risk is defined as a future event or conditions with a measurable probability, I want to make sure that the finish date of my project is in the future, because when I'm talking about a risk, I'm talking about something that may or may not happen in the future. If you are with me, to open a Microsoft Project file in Primavera Risk Analysis, the first thing to do, we're going to open the Microsoft Project file. So that's the first one. I'm going to open it. And the second thing to do is to open Primavera Risk Analysis. Now I'm going to look for the software on my computer. I think it should be somewhere here. I'm going to click on it to open it. Here it is. So for me, I had it on my desktop, but for you, it may be anywhere on your system or list of applications. To perform this task, obviously, you need to have installed the software before you attend here. So what you're looking at on my screen is the Primavera Risk Analysis homepage. And as you can see, there isn't much yet here, but part of what we can do, we can perform a schedule validation. We can develop a risk model. We can run risk analysis. And after running the risk analysis, we can view the result. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop here to see whether you guys were able to open at least Primavera. If you didn't open the Microsoft Project file, at least I would like you to open Primavera. Remember, we have two ways to do what we're doing. So I'm going to go through the process to import for the first time, but the second step, I'm going to show you how to do it if you don't have access to Microsoft Project. So let me stop here and take your feedback from the chat to make sure you at least were able to perform one of these two tasks. Please let me know in the chat room. You can chat, say yes. Okay, I see Anuj was able to do it, and Raj, perfect. Who else? I need more feedback. Okay, so someone unable to access what? Which part? Unable to access the Primavera Risk Analysis or software, or which one? Okay, so okay, yeah, we can open the Primavera. Okay, so that's perfect. Yes, open, perfect. Okay, so Now, what I'd like you to understand is that to import the Microsoft project file must be open. And after you open the Microsoft project file, then you can import. So now, by knowing that many of you are actually right with me here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import the file into Primavera Risk Analysis. So to do that, I click on File. Now, when I click on File, from File tab, you can open a project plan. That's a project. You can open a project plan or baseline that was recently opened. So if I look at my file, for example, you can see I recently opened many project plan using Primavera Risk Analysis. You can, what else can you do? You can import data from Primavera P6, as you can see here. You can import from P6, that's from Primavera P6. You can import from Microsoft Project, Deltect, UN, CFACT. Those are different tabs of file that you can open. Now, as you can see, although Primavera Risk Analysis sort of looks like P6, it is not P6, but it is compatible with P6. Now, working with Primavera Risk Analysis gives you actually a very good idea about P6 and how it works. Now, the Primavera XER is just a type of file that you can use to exchange data in the Primavera system. So if you have a Primavera XER file, you can certainly open it here too. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to open a Microsoft project file. So what I do, I click on Microsoft project from the file menu, right, from the file tab, and I click open project, right? So all I need to do right now is to locate where my file is located. So I know I saved my files here. Now, as you can see, the only files I can see from this folder are the Microsoft project files, because right now the extension files that can see, I have selected the file name, the file type is MPP. So I'm going to ask you to open the first file, the CSP plant. Now remember, if you didn't have project open, you don't worry about it. I'm going to show you how to do it another way. But at least we want to know that we can actually do this. So from this dialog box, if for those of you who are able to do that, you can see I have some things that I can do, that I can customize the data that I am importing. For the most part, the default setting works. I need my time unit to be day, so that's perfect. And I have 8 hours in one day. If that doesn't work for your project schedule, if you're using 6 hours a day instead of 8 hours a day, you can make those changes here. But this will work for us. We're going to use a standard calendar with 8 hours a day. And the resource and cost tab, I want to make sure that I'm able to import the resource calendars, and also that I'm importing all the project resources and information. And also I can create a cost distribution. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to click OK and import to import the data. Okay, so that's it. That's my file. I'm going to, this is now my Primavera file, and I'm going to save it. I put a number one here to differentiate it from the other file that I already have. So the result here, what you can see, because I had the report viewer checkbox checked when I was importing, it gives me that Microsoft project import report, which practically a summary of what I imported from my Microsoft project. My resources, activities, etc., giving me a summary here of the plan that I imported. Now, so that's one of the things you see. But if you want to go to your data in a Gantt view, you can actually close this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to close this. I'm going to close the report, and here's what you have. As you can see, the user interface is very similar to Microsoft Project. Instead of the tab project, here you have the tab plan, but with practically all the information that you need. Now, why I didn't go from scratch to allow you to type the data manual is because it would be taking too long, and I know you know how to type. Practically, we go in this view, in the Gantt view, as you can see, this is the Gantt chart view here. You go and type the informations, and as you type, the IDs would be created, and the remaining durations here is the durations you estimated in Microsoft Project. So that's what you're looking at here. So that's the result of the import feature that we just use right now. If you want to make any changes before you start, you can certainly do that. But the best thing to do is to make sure that your plan is complete in project if you import it. Now, do you have any questions here before we move forward to start working and making changes here to perform our risk analysis? Any questions? No? Okay. So,
Professor, sorry, I just have a fundamental question.
Go ahead.
Possible. Primavera risk analysis, such a risk analysis is not possible to do in MS Project?
You can't perform the risk analysis in MS Project unless you actually add the Primavera risk analysis or any risk analysis add-on to MS Project, because MS Project is not designed to do this. Now, what I'd like to do though, I'd like you to know if you couldn't import this file to your project, there is another way to open the file. So what you can do, you can click File and click Open, and look for the Primavera file that I gave you. It will look like something like that, and with the extension .plan. That's a Primavera file. You can just go to File and open it. So if you couldn't import, if you don't have Microsoft Project. So the thing to do is to go to File and click Open and look for the Primavera file and the file with extension .plan, the CSP plant, and you will be able to open it and join us where we are right here. So that's for those who were not able to work with projects. So let me know if you are able to do that. For those who don't have project, you can let me know in the chat before we move forward. Okay, I assume we are all set here. Okay, now, what does it mean to perform a quantitative risk analysis in Primavera? It is only possible if you have uncertainty model in the plan. So to use Primavera risk analysis for quantitative risk analysis, uncertainty modeling is required. You can model schedule uncertainty by providing at least 2 duration estimates for each activity or for each cost. What does that mean exactly? When they ask you how long you think the activity project charter will take. Now, as you can see here on my screen, someone believes that it will take 1 day, right? And this is called a most likely duration, most likely durations. Based on your knowledge of creating a project charter, you believe that it will take 1 day. But uncertainty modeling means that you are not quite sure about how long it will take. Instead of giving a most likely estimate, you give a range estimate or you give 3-point estimate. So to model uncertainty, and that's if you are here as part of the lessons, in part 2, we talk about entering 3-point duration estimates, right? So in this exercise, what we're going to do, we're going to use 3-point estimates because we will use what we call a triangular distribution or beta PERT distributions. Now, why these 2 distributions? They are very good at modeling uncertainty in duration and cost estimates in project activities. Now, sometimes you could use a range estimate, in other words, give 2 values. It may take, 1 day or 3 days, and anything in between. So that's called a uniform distribution. That's what, but we're not going to use a uniform distribution. We're going to use the triangular distributions here. So the key difference between the 2 is that the triangular distributions will use a simple average to calculate an average estimate, but the beta PERT will use a weighted average, right? So we can actually do that as we, depending on what works for your project. So what I'm going to do is to show you on the right side of the Gantt view. As you can see here, it's just like an entry table in MS Project. I enter my information I have the Gantt chart telling me, how long those durations are in visual term, but also to the right, you can see here I have the ability to enter minimum duration, most likely durations, and maximum duration. And that's going to allow us to perform what we call an uncertainty, perform what we call a Monte Carlo simulation, associate a probability with every possible outcome. What I mean by that, if I enter 3 durations but for create project charter, it may take the minimum duration to complete, it may take the most likely durations or the maximum duration. I don't know yet. So since it is a future event, I can always associate a probability with that. So that's what we're looking at. That's what you're looking at here for our from my screen. So normally we could actually, we know the most likely durations, right? For let's say for high level planning, for example, here on my screen, I know it's going to take 8 days. I could enter them manually, but it would take a very long time to enter this information manually. So what I'm going to do, I am actually going to show you how to do it automatically. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to ask you to click on risk, right? And let's click on duration quick risk, right? Duration quick risk. So the duration quick risk dialog box, what it does, it allows you to take percentages of the most likely duration The most likely durations, I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to change them. So I'm going to leave it 100%. But the minimum 75% and the maximum durations, I'm going to estimate it at 150% of the most likely durations. So as you can see here, it says remaining durations, but we already know the remaining durations is the most likely duration. So that's the language in Primavera. So I could change the maximum. If I'm, very pessimistic, I could say, it's going to be 200% of the most likely or the remaining directions. You can certainly change those data as you see fit. So as you can see, my minimum, most likely, maximum is now empty. So I'm going to also check the overwrite existing estimates. I know it's empty now, but anytime you enter data manually and you want a quick change, you can use that. Now, the distributions that is selected is the beta part. You can change that to triangular if you wanted to, but I'm going to leave it beta part. It is distributions that I like. I'm very familiar with it. I know it models uncertainty well in durations and costs, so I'm going to use it. So after I check everything here, I know that's what I want. I click OK. So as you can see here, my data is automatically populated, right? So what I have right now is what we call uncertainty modeling. Now, if you click on any activity, you could enter data manually. If you click on any activity, if I click on create project charter, for example, and I click on risk and uncertainty, it's give me information about the distributions I'm using, the most likely, the minimum, and the maximum. It is on, which means that I am using a probability distributions, right? So that's one thing that we can do to start working with this. So when to use the duration quick risk feature? Duration quick risk, is a useful feature when there's a lack of data or you want to have a quick assessment of risk associated with a project. It is usually preferable to consider each project activity and WBS separately, particularly if you have experts working with you. But here, I know we want to see how the theory can translate into practice. So what we're going to do, we're going to accept the fact that these estimates are very good estimates, and we're going to use it to perform our risk analysis. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do now, right? So what I'm going to do right now, since I have my uncertainty model in the project, what I'm going to do, I'm going to perform the risk analysis. So performing or running a risk analysis in Primavera is what we call performing a Monte Carlo simulations. What is it exactly is when you have many possible outcomes, you use trials to see, which one is possible considering different probability associated with those outcomes. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to click on risk and run risk analysis. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to now from run risk analysis or the risk analysis dialog box, what you can do, you can change the number of iterations or repetitions, right? You can show step through the analysis to see what's changing in your project, depending on whether you are using the minimum, the most likely, the maximum, or the average durations to complete the project. What do you want to see after the analysis? I'm going to choose to see a distribution graph first, but you can also choose to see a tornado graph, a scatter plot, or probabilistic cash flow. Now, we don't have cash flow enter here in this project. Cash flow is when we are trying to predict the payback period for a project. We can use that, but for now we're going to take a look at the distribution graph. The tornado graph is a graph we use to look at sensitivity in durations or in cost. We will talk about that later in this workshop. So the distribution graph is this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to click Analyze. So when you click Analyze, a step is an iteration. So if I click on a step, for example, you can see, take a look at the bars, how they are moving. Every time I perform an iterations or step, it shows me my possibilities. And if I click on go, it's going to go faster, right? Sometimes some activities will be on the critical path. Sometimes they won't, depending on the duration that I choose, whether it's minimum, most likely, or maximum durations. So the critical path of the project will change, and at the end, it will associate that with a probability. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to complete. I'm going to click complete, and when you click complete, it goes faster. So it doesn't have to take that long. So this is the result of your Monte Carlo simulation. Now, what can you do with this information? You can use it to negotiate with your project sponsor. The project sponsor sometimes, or most of the times, I'd say, give you a top-down estimate. And the top-down estimate is what they believe the project would take or would cost, but and many times it's not real. And even when you go and create a detailed plan with most likely estimates in Microsoft Project, you don't really know what is your chance of completing the project with the estimates you create with the most likely estimates. So using 3-point estimates give you an opportunity to negotiate a realistic target for your project, or realistic targets for your project. So it turns out that the completion date that we were looking for this project, the most likely or deterministic estimate here we were looking for is March 31st. March 31st. So the date is in French here. So what is the probability actually of completing the project on March 31st is only 2%. So think about not having uncertainty model in your plan, and you're going to try to complete a project with a most likely estimate of March 31st, and the probability for you to do that is only 2%.
Alexis?
Yes.
Excuse me. Before this, we chose this minimum and maximum as 75% and 100%. That was under which option?
It was under duration quick risk. If you go to risk and click on duration quick risk.
If I go to risk and duration?
Yeah, duration quick risk.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, and then you can perform your analysis.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So that for me is something important. I would like to have an 80% chance of completing my project by the date I agree with my upon which I agree with my sponsor. So what I'm going to do right now is to tell my sponsor, the chance for me to complete this project on March 31st is going to be very slim. we probably should look for a more realistic finish date for this project. And that's give you an opportunity to negotiate, not only here in terms of finish date, but also you can negotiate in terms of duration in days, right? As you can see, deterministic durations and your 80% probability are completely far off. So that's a reasons for you to speak with your sponsor and explain, you know, I actually would like some more time to complete the project. And you can also negotiate in terms of cost analysis too with your sponsor. So I would like to take any questions you have here before we move to the next part of the workshop, and take you know, if some of you are behind, give you a little bit of time to catch up.
Yes, Professor. Professor, in the graphs that we see, there are two down arrows showing, right? On 50% and 80%.
Mm-hmm.
What are those?
Yeah, on the graph you have probability, you know, from 0% to 100%. You can click on the graph anywhere. Here, mine is on 80%, on 50%, and on here it's on 12% for the cost. I'm looking for the cost. But if you take a look at the finish date, I am on 80%, 50%, and 2% for the deterministic date, or the date finish date I estimated for the project. But you can click anywhere. If you click here, when you see a hand, I can take a look at, for example, 90%, right? So that's a 90% selected. So you can select any information you like.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Professor.
And the 90% selected, you know, and remember, this is February 5th because the date is in French. And as you can see, my estimated finish dates are in the future. And when you, I know some of you may have taken project risk analysis already, but in your risk presentation and how you talk about risk in your project really will depend on uncertainty modeling. And in a minute, I'm going to show you how to integrate qualitative risk analysis into this. And after we integrate the qualitative risk analysis, we will rerun the risk analysis to see how the risk will impact our model. So that's what we're going to do. Anyone else? Other questions?
Yeah, Professor Anuj here. I have one question related to the number of the bar graph. You can see in the columns why the bar graph is like this. Is there the Monte Carlo iterations are presented here or something else?
What are you looking in on my screen? Yes.
Yes.
Is the results of the Monte Carlo simulations. And the bars you're looking for, the vertical bars, are the number of time, you know, the durations was hit during this repetition. So remember, I did it 1,000 times. So in those times, all those bars, you know, will have representations here. As you can see here, this date was hit that many times, this one, you know, that many times, based on the vertical axis to the right that says it hits, you know. So that's the results of the Monte Carlo simulations, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Professor.
Yes, and it is very common questions when people say, well, how do you interpret the Monte Carlo simulations? That's what we're actually doing here. And for every possible results, we actually know the probability associated. I mean, you can't calculate that without a software like Primavera Risk Analysis. But I'd like you to know this Primavera is not the only software out there for risk analysis. There are others, but Primavera, is available to all students, and it is associated with P6. It's very popular in many industries. It's used to be from P3, it's used to be mostly construction, but from P3 to P6, we've seen, a lot of manufacturers and other industries adopted the software. Okay, so let me, okay, so that's, now there's what we have here that I click on the graph. That's what we here call highlights or highlighters on the right side of this. Now, this is very useful to me. Now, if we are all caught up here, we're going to move to the third part where we talk about something called task existence probability. Okay, task existence means that sometimes when you have some activities in a project schedule, there is a chance that this activity may not exist in the project or throughout the life of the project. And an example is when you have a constructions project and you plan on doing certain work if something occurs. But if, for example, you are working on a foundations, you may find something in the ground that requires you to hire an expert to analyze it, to make sure that whether something that you need to do before you build on the land, right? So if you find, let's say, some remains of certain animals there, is it a good idea to build on it, or should you call, some expert to analyze before you do it? Now, a common thing we talk about in software development is the idea of bug fixing. We know that every time we code, there is a possibility that there will be bug when we're done with a feature, but there is a chance there will be no bug also. So there is a chance that the task or the activity fix bug may not exist. So what is the probability for that? So what we know is going to be important. For example, based on your experience, how many times did you code something and you didn't have bug to fix? Then that's going to guide you in knowing or determining whether this activity may or may not exist. If it may exist, what is the probability? So that's what we call a task existence probability. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to close this distribution graph. Well, I'm going to close it and I'm going to save it, right? I am going to save this file because I'm going to go back to it later to perform some more activities, but we're going to look at the idea of task existence probability. So I'm going to close that. For this, we need the second practice file that I gave you, the software development file. So to open it, I'm going to click File, Open, and it's going to give me the opportunity to open this file that I need, software development file. There we go. So I'm going to open it. Okay, so my file, I just opened it. Remember, now this time I didn't import it from my Microsoft project. I already had it. So just for us to go faster, right? So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to do the same thing we did before. I'm going to model uncertainty in the plan. So click on rest and duration quick rest to do it. instead of typing manually. We're going to leave these numbers because they make sense to me, okay? So just click OK, and then we have uncertainty model in the plan. So what else I need here? I'm going to look for the task fix bug. Now see if you find the task fix bug, right? Now, this is the task fix bug, right? Click on it, right? Right click on it. So I'm going to wait for you guys to see what I've done. All right, I look for fix bugs. I right click on it, right? And I click on existence risk. So here at the bottom of my screen, or you can see that there is a square box that says on. I'm going to turn it on. The existence, this risk has an existence task risk, or there's a risk that it may not exist. Now, what is the probability? I'm going to set it at 90%, right? So in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to type the 90% because my screen is small. Hopefully very soon I'm going to have a larger computer screen for this workshop, right? So what I'm saying here, the probability for this task to exist is 90%. So I'm going to do that, and that's done. Okay. Now you can have many tasks like that in your project. So what I'd like you to understand here is that those tasks, you must be identify them in your project plan and model uncertainty in the plan. I already have durations uncertainty, so I know that I know the probability of this task to exist is only 90%. So what I can do now, I can run the risk analysis on this project plan right now to see what's going to happen. So let's click on risk and run risk analysis. And the number of iterations, 1000, leave it like that. Click analyze and click go. Right? As you can see here, you're looking at all the possible completions. You know, some of the activities, sometimes they're blue, sometimes they're red. It means that they are not always on the critical path. Not all of the activities are always on the critical path. But I am going to show you a way to know what are the activities that are always on the critical path or almost always on the critical path. This is where we use the tornado diagram to look into those things, right? So that's what we're doing right now. Okay, and that is the result of my Monte Carlo simulations for this project. So now this is important. Existence task risk is important to model in your project for many reasons, because they increase the accuracy of your analysis. So that's one thing to keep in mind, right? So here, any questions here on this? No questions? No questions? Now, when you model existence task risk in your project, you can actually choose what happens in that dialog box, whether to keep links to other tax options or whether to remove the links. It depends on the scenario. So if the task does not exist, you can say, well, leave the link anyway, it will not impact my project. But you can say, well, let's just remove the links. It's not make much of a difference for you. So you can certainly do that. Now, we talk about the key difference between the triangular distributions and the beta distributions. So we will certainly not spend time talking about the two, but whenever you run an analysis, you can choose which distributions you are going to use. And again, the key difference between the two is that the triangular distributions uses a weighted average, and the beta PERT distributions, we use a weighted average, giving more weight to the most likely number. If you remember the 3-point estimate formula, it's optimistic plus 4 times most likely plus pessimistic divided by 6. And giving more weight to the most likely number means that you have more confidence in the most likely estimates of the plan. So that's what you have right here. Okay, so we analyze the cost distribution graph. We interpret the results of the Monte Carlo simulations here. We know what is the P50, P90, P80. We can provide this information. As you can see here, our deterministic duration for this project is way better than the other one. The other one was only 2%, and this one is 33%. You know, sometimes you have better estimates according to the software. So that's what you have in here. Now, what I'd like you to remember is the idea that taking time to create good estimates is actually important, because in computer or in IT, we have a saying that goes garbage in, garbage out. If you don't take time to create accurate estimates working with people who actually know about the tasks, about the activities, then you're going to have a problem. It doesn't matter whether you have beautiful graphs or not, it's not going to be very useful to you. Okay, so the next topic today is criticality index. We talk about something called a tornado diagram. So I am going to work with that, but before we do so, I'd like to take your questions.
Yeah, Professor, I have one question.
Yes.
So yeah, you changed only the fixed bugs to 90% probability, correct? And
Yes.
the whole, and then we run simulation for the whole project. So that always gives the estimation for the full project.
Yes.
Not for the activity, correct?
Not just for the activity. For here, we're looking at the full project.
Okay. Correct.
Yeah.
Because we took the same, I think minimum duration 75% and maximum 150%. But the result is way better in this project related to that project.
Yes, the results of the Monte Carlo simulations is for the entire project. All I did is showing that for some activities in your project, there is a probability that they may not exist. And you can always go and model and go individually and work on those activities to create what we call a task existence risk. And it will have an impact to your Monte Carlo simulations, because sometimes the task will exist, sometimes it will not, but the results of the Monte Carlo simulations will be for the entire project.
Okay, correct. So for each activity, we can give the duration also. We can change the duration according to the activity so that the estimate will be better, because here we directly use the
yes,
whole project.
Absolutely. So
okay.
If you want to change the most likely numbers, when you do the duration quick fix, for example, if you become, let's say, for whatever the reasons, you become more confident in your most likely numbers, you want to make changes to them. Or if you become more pessimistic about them, you want to change them, then you can change them too. Which means the estimates you created, you know, at the beginning of the planning phase or during the planning phase, before you perform your risk analysis, you can always change them if you want to.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So anyone else before we go to the next topic? Huh? No? Okay. So the next topic, I believe, is we wanted to talk about is the idea of criticality index. Now, simply put, the quality index provides you with an important information. It is how often or how frequently a task was on the critical path during the Monte Carlo simulations. And this is something you can actually get from the tornado graph. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. So in your instructions, if you look for your instructions and scroll down, you'll see criticality index. The criticality index allows you to identify project activities that are likely to cause project delays to the project, right? So they ask you to focus on those activities in project management textbooks. And the question is, how do you find them? Well, the criticality index is that and provides you with that information. So that's how you can focus on those activities that are more likely to cause a project delay. And you are also focus on the risks with the highest impact, with the highest possible impact on your project. By monitoring activities with a high criticality index, a project is less likely to be late. So the criticality index is calculated after a risk analysis is performed. It is the percentage of time, I've already said that, a task spent on the critical path during the analysis. So a task is considered to be on the critical path if its total float or total slack time is 0. So that's our theory. We've been talking about that for a while now. So if a task has a 100% criticality index, it means that during the Monte Carlo simulations, no matter how the task durations varied, the critical path always included that project activity. So that's one thing to know about this. Now, how do we display the critical path? So what we're going to do, we're going to close this distribution analyzer. I'm going to close that. I'm going to say save, right? So click on risk, right? So that's risk in the risk tab, right? And what else we do? We here we go. We're going to say, that's one way to do it. We're going to say run risk analysis, but we're going to choose the tornado graph this time. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to click analyze and we click complete. And then we're going to see our tornado graph here. So that's what now there are other ways to access it. I'm going to show you, but that's one way to do it. Instead of I've shown you this before. Instead of showing the how do we call that, the distribution graph, you can show the tornado graph. So what do we have here? We have our criticality index here, right? So this is called a schedule sensitivity index or a criticality index. Now, as you can see here, it's explained on the top right of the class. Let me move this. Now that's my schedule sensitivity. Let's move to my criticality index, but I had to change my, move that zoom bar away for me to see what's going on here. So I put that on top. Hopefully it doesn't block your view here. So here is you have a duration sensitivity, you have a cost sensitivity, you have a criticality index, durations causality, and a schedule sensitivity index. Every single of this concept and results are from the tornado graph, which measures sensitivity. Now, for my criticality index, this is what I'm showing you here, that post-project review has an index of 100%. It means that for all the 1,000 times that I run the simulations, every iteration, so every single iterations, post-project review was always on the critical path. That's what you look at. That's your interpretations of the criticality index. So that's important information for you to know in terms of trade-off analysis. And this is one of the things the project manager does. The project manager makes trade-off, between cost and time, between cost and scope. If you know that a project activity is always critical, then you can actually pay more attention to it. And if you want to move people around in your project, you know where you can actually move people around. So that's what you're looking at. Initiate project, plan project work. Obviously, these are project management activities. Direct and manage project work. They were actually there for major part of the analysis, about 70%. So define preliminary business requirements, 32%, and same for the others here. So that's actually useful information for you. So that's your criticality index, and many times people, think about it. They don't know how to come about the number that they need to talk about when it comes to criticality. So that's the result here. Questions? Questions?
Yeah, Professor, I have one question. So if this is 100%, it means we have to assign, this is the critical task, we have to assign someone to this task, or we look closely to this task?
Well, it really means that, first of all, you have to assign people to all project activities, because if you don't, the activities will not be completed. But the criticality index has some limitations. And here we explain in our instructions, just because an activity is on the critical path all the time does not always mean that the activity is going to be significant to the project completion date. For example, a post-project review happens at the end of the project. So even if it's always on the critical path, it's not that important for the completions of the project. Does that make sense? And I know a post-project review for my organization's knowledge base is important, but how much it's going to impact the completions of the project, not very much. So, and that's why I explained the limitations of the criticality index in the instructions. So you have to analyze it, and also using your judgment as project manager.
Correct. Thank you, Professor.
Okay. So there are some pretty interesting information here. Duration sensitivity, for example. As you know, sensitivity, when people talk about sensitivity analysis, this is what we're doing here. Sensitivity is a measure of the amount of correlations between two sets of variables. For example, here we're talking about the durations of this activity and the durations of the project. Here, we look at values from -100 to percent to +100%. So they can take any value from no correlation, 0%, to negative correlations, inversely correlated, or to a positive correlations, positively correlated. So that's what you are looking at here. And on my graph, that figure you're looking at, it tells us that the activity direct and manage project work has a strong positive correlations with the durations of the project. We're looking at 93%. And why is that? Now, you can call direct and manage project a hammock activity. I don't know if you learned this concept in project management. A hammock activity is an activity that encompasses many parts of the project. And the truth is, direct and manage project work starts from the time you start the execution phase of the project to the end. That's a major part of the project. In other words, for the part it wasn't there is for project initiations and project planning, but direct and manage project work is what project management is about. So it makes perfect sense that it has a strong and positive correlations with the end of the project. And another thing, I think it makes sense because poor management may impact the completions of the project. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's one of the interesting things about duration sensitivity. You can see how the durations of some activities correlate with the durations of the project. So that's what you're looking at right here. Okay, so we can actually talk about cost sensitivity. So that's how the cost of an activity correlates with the cost of the project. Now, as you can see, software development project is the project. When the software takes into considerations activity ID 1, which is the project, then obviously you see a 100% correlation, because that's the entire cost of the project. Now, direct and manage project work take a big chunk of the part in terms of correlations. So also poor management could lead to increase in spending. So that's what you're looking at here. But if you take the project executions like beta release development, architectural design, etc., they have correlations of 30%, 21%, and 17%. So that's your analysis here. And remember, if you forget what this means, when you perform the analysis, you can always look at the top or look at the instructions we provide here. You can keep them for your course in risk analysis. They're going to be very useful. And for the most part, in a risk analysis class, you always need the baseline to perform this analysis, because the reason is a risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. The objectives from a risk analysis standpoint is to deliver the project on time, on budget, and according to the design specifications and stakeholders' requirements. So you can always find this analysis useful for your risk analysis. Okay, so we talk about cost sensitivity. What we mean by that: the cost sensitivity measures correlations between the cost of a project activity and the cost of the project. We take a look at that. What else we talk about? Schedule sensitivity will be interpreted the same way. So what we need to understand here is to understand the limitations of these graphs and where they can be very useful for negotiations with your stakeholders at the beginning of your project. Some of the concepts we can't actually cover now is the idea of a probabilistic cash flow, because we didn't actually enter cash flow here in terms of cash inflows for our project. In other words, any probabilistic cash flow informations we have here is going to be in terms of expenses, so not going to be very useful here. But for the future, if you're taking a, let's say, project finance course, you can always use the Primavera Risk Analysis to take a look at your probabilistic cash flow analysis. So that's going to be useful. So how do we do that? I'm going to close this. And if you want to take a look at probabilistic cash flow in the future, I'm going to go here. If you click on risk, run risk analysis, and if you click on options, right, you can actually look for your analysis, and let's say here, okay, so risk analysis, click options, save probabilistic cash flow data. Looking for save probabilistic cash flow data, that's right. Now, my cash flow here, I didn't enter any information, so that's why you don't see anything here. You could actually save net present value and internal rate of return in your project. That's something you can do, you know, if you concerned with cash flows, future cash flow. In project finance, for example, future cash flows are extremely important for project stakeholders. Bankers, for example, will ask for probabilistic cash flows data to make decisions. They big on looking at risk for the project. So that's going to be something that is important for them, right? So I'm going to click OK here, right? Let's go to, we already analyzed this. We don't have to do it again, but I'm going to complete it.
Professor, I just wanted to ask a question. I'm sorry to jump in. For the critical tasks, I just wanted to ask if there are two critical paths in the project. So can we think of a supercritical task at that time?
No, I wouldn't call it a super critical path. What I would do, I would take a look at the critical path with the highest probability of occurrence. So if you think about it like that, if you want to make decisions, you know, which critical path. Now, note that we're not talking about different critical paths of the project, but different possible critical path to complete the project. So if we know the probability associated with them, then we can certainly choose the critical path with the highest probability as the critical path we're going to use for our project. And I think that's a very important question to ask. Now, what I was saying right here, the reports feature is extremely useful. As you can see here, from the report feature, you can run a schedule check for your schedule. When you send a Microsoft project file to me, if I want to know how many mistakes you have on the project file, I can run a schedule check. Now, the schedule check create a report like this, right? With telling me how many open-ended tasks you have. And open-ended tasks means that your project has a flaw. Your project schedule has a flaw because, you know, all tasks should have a predecessor, and all tasks or activities should have a successor, except the last one, or the first one is not going to have a predecessor. But as you can see here, the open-ended task in this project file will be the first one and the last one. So that's okay. Tasks with duration uncertainty, etc., I can actually look at this information. So it's pretty detailed report. And I use this to grade in other courses where they don't use Primavera Risk Analysis, but they use Microsoft Projects. So when they send a file to me, I quickly import it. It's take me a few minutes, and I can use that to provide feedback and tell students, you know, this is where you had mistakes in your file, etc. It's actually very useful. And I'm asking you to start using it for yourself. When you create a schedule, come here or run a schedule check to see what's going on with your schedule. One thing I wanted you to know is that in reports, you have the distribution graph. Once you run the risk analysis, you can always go to report to find them. You can go to the report to find the tornado graph and also the probabilistic cash flow we talk about here. So the reason I'm not going to talk a lot about this is because we didn't enter possible future cash inflows for the project. It's just about the cost of our project. So probabilities here and possible completion dates will be, costs for possible completion costs will be for the cost of the project, which we have already analyzed using Monte Carlo simulations. But if I have a project with possible cash inflows, the probabilistic cash flow is going to be very important for me to analyze my cash inflows. So that's why this is very important in project finance. Okay, so I'm going to close that, and so as not to miss our deadline or our time for the remaining of the workshop. What I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly show you how to work with the risk register and link to your risks you identified in a project to different parts of the project, and to make sure that you actually have a real risk analysis that you perform in the plan. So what I'm going to do, guys, let's close that. If you have questions, I'm going to answer them, but I'm going to close that, and then we're going to open a different file. Now, any other questions before we're done with this? Okay, so I'm going to give you time to open the other file. That's the other instruction files on lesson 6, and we are going back to reopen our first file to do that. So I'm going to give you guys time to do that. I'm going to close that. So this is lesson 6. Now, do you have lesson 6? Do you guys have lesson 6? Yes? No? Yes? I'm waiting for you. Okay. I see Aman has it. Who else has lesson 6? It's the PDF file I gave you. It's called Project Risk Analytics Workshop 2021-2022 register, risk register. Okay, so we're going to open that. Okay, perfect. It looks like some of you have the file, so Are we ready to move forward to the next step of this? Yes? Okay. So what do we learn in lesson 6? In lesson 6, we will learn how to add risk to the risk register. We will add risk mitigation strategies, create a waterfall chart. We will map risk to WBS item, that's called risk mapping. And we will quantify risk impacts in Primavera, create risk report, and build what we call the impacted risk plan. We will model the impact of risk on the project schedule. So the beauty about using Primavera is the idea of importing data instead of typing data manually. So what are we going to do here? I'm going to open the CSP plant file. So if you want if you're ready, please click on File. And let's take the open recent file. And let's take this plan we've been working on, right? The CSP plan. You already perform a risk analysis on this, right? So that's where we are. Are you guys ready? Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to click on risk, and I'm looking for the risk register. Okay, so as you can see here, there are different ways, many different ways, 3 ways to be exact, to enter data in the risk register. You can, use a standard risk register and then enter data manually, or you can import an existing risk register to the to Primavera. So I don't know if you remember, I give you a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and the Excel spreadsheet is called EPC register 2. Now, do you have that file? EPC register 2. How many of you have it? Okay, perfect. Awesome. Now, so before I do this, I'm going to show you, well, I can show you after, but from this risk register dialog box, click import existing risk register. We're going to import the EPC register 2 to Primavera. So import existing risk register and click OK. This will replace the existing data in the risk register, because in the current risk register, I didn't have a lot of information in it, but it had some, example, but it's just going to ask me to replace them, and I'm just going to say yes, yes. And I'm going to look for the file. Where's my, okay, so for the files of type, select Excel, Microsoft Excel, right? Are you guys with me? Okay. So I want to make sure everyone is with me. So from there, I click on the EPC register 2. I think that's the file you have. And I'm going to click open. Okay. Here it says one already exists. Would you like to replace this task impact? Yes. Yes. Click yes until you're done. Here we go. And yes again. I replace all data that I had, And here is your risk register. Now, what you're looking at my file right here is everything I had in my file for the spreadsheet. I have a number of risks here. ID, you can create give them any ID you want. But I create the ID, and then I said whether they were threat or opportunity. I was doing a T for threat, or O for opportunity. And I have the risk event. The risk event here, key resource unavailable. If you go further to my right, and I have, I have a probability for it. Probability is 60%. The impact here, the probability, this is pre-mitigations. I have probability and impact, right? So on the impact scale here, I have negligible for that and negligible for this, and very high for scope. We're gonna call this, we're gonna look at this in a minute, but instead of calling safety, we're going to call it a scope risk, right? So we can certainly do that later. Now, score, we have a score of 8, and the reason for that is because here we have a very now this is another thing. I changed that by mistake, right? So I want to make sure that everything is okay, and you can arrange that from high to low using the sort button here. So that's what you have. Key resource unavailable, I have this score of 56. And as mitigation strategy, I choose to reduce it. Now, if you want to speak the PMI language, for example, reduce means mitigate. You can mitigate or reduce the probability of the risk to occur, or you can reduce the impact of the risk if it occurs. Now, in terms of mitigations, what mitigations strategy that I am going to use, I'm going to change resource assignment policy. Now, changing resource assignment policy will address the resource availability issue that I may have. At the bottom, you have a bar you can use to move to the right to see pre-mitigations means that I have risks that I identified, I have impact, I have probability and impact, right? So what I need to know how my mitigation strategies will impact the risk after I implement them. So as you can see here, a lot of things change, right? I have a thing change here for the first time. You can see I go from a 50% score to a 0% score by implementing my strategy. But the cost for it, as you can see for this project, is extensive. So what I can decide is it really dealing with this risk outweighs the benefit. So I have to think about cost-benefit analysis. So I think now this is a total cost to mitigate it, but I have to take the probability into considerations to take a look at a risk exposure. Anyway, so although the risk exposure will be based on the probability of the risk to occur, but as you can see, the total cost here is actually very high. So that's an example here of a pre-mitigation and a post-mitigation plan in the risk analysis process. So what happened when you implement a risk response? So that's what the PMI call implement risk responses, and looking into the effects of the implementations of the risk response strategy. So another thing that I'd like you to see here is that every risk has a cause, and every risk has effect, right? And I explain not only the effect, but also I explain in terms of total cost and how they're going to impact my project. So that's actually very important. So you can look at risk informations you enter in the risk detail at the bottom, right? You can take a look at a waterfall chart for this particular risk, right? How the risk goes from a score of 56 to a score of 0, right? So that's actually very important. So the waterfall chart in terms of risk management language shows the impact of or the effects of the implementations of a risk mitigation strategy to a risk event. So that's actually a very nice chart to have for your project presentations to show stakeholders how you do dealing with risk in your project. So any questions here? No? So other things that I'd like to show you is that there is to enter new risks, you can just come here and enter the information. For example, in the instructions, if you want to go and follow on in part 2, entering risk manually to the risk register. For example, just an example, you can type risk 3, right? And let's say that this is a threat. Under title here, we're going for the risk, we're going to type contract delay. Right. So that's a risk, right? We can change probabilities, right? So what we're gonna have here for probability, let's change it from very high, which is the default, to high, right? 70%. And let's, so what else we have? As for pre-mitigations probability to high, there is a high probability of this risk occurring. Change the pre-mitigation schedule, cost and scope to medium, low, and high. So let's go medium, low, and high. Right? So that's, see that give us a risk score of 28, right? So now are we going to accept that? Let's choose to reduce it, right? We're going to reduce, we're going to believe that this is a risk that can be reduced in terms of probability, right? So that's how you enter risk manually. Obviously, this is called a pre-mitigation plan. You need to show post-mitigations after you enter data, what happens to the plan. Questions? No? So,
Professor, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
First, this T and O is opportunity, T is for?
T is for threat.
Threat.
Yeah.
Okay, threat. Okay.
Yeah. Which means a negative risk.
Yeah. One more thing. The score which we have given. So I think it is from 25 above. We can change this score also.
Yes, you can. Yeah. Absolutely. You can, you can create your own scale, right? You can create your own scale, and the probability here is calculated based on the scale you create. And we're going to check on that in a minute. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how to to make sure that the risks you created, they link to actually the project WBS item. Because when you identify risks, you identify them for the different parts of the project. And then we can, take the time to at least enter informations for one risk to see how we actually do it. And we can actually go to if you go to, let's go to edit, for example, and click on risk scoring, right? So if you come here, you can change any of these informations here. For example, we talk about the impact scale, right? We talk about the impact scale. You can see here, I had safety information. I can call it, instead of calling it safety risk, I can call it scope risk, right? So, and when I go back, and if I save this, I just need to click OK here. And I'm going to click OK. So when I go back, you can see that instead of safety, it says scope. I can, and I'm going to show you again. I'm going to edit risk scoring, right? And instead of scope, you can call it performance risk. So again, I need to move this out of my screen to click OK. As you can see, everything changed. So how do you do that? You do that in edit, right? You can, from edit, you can change your scales. You can change the probability scales. You can change the impact scales. You can make a lot of changes here and design this based on your organization's risk tolerance and risk attitude. So you can, and your project size, because you can't really come and use this as is. You have to, if you are working on a $100,000 project, then you're not going to have, risks of, of that size in my project, in my project here, because here I'm dealing with a large scale project. That's a very expensive project. So from the risk register, you can see you have files. For example, I can import risk into the risk register, and I can export my data to a spreadsheet. I can save and return to the plan. So edit, I can edit. View, I have tools. We're going to use that in a minute, and I can create reports for risk matrix, risk scoring, etc. So what else we need to see here is that there are two tabs, important tabs here. The qualitative tabs, in which we have risk detail, code field, and mitigation. We can talk about. So this design change, for example, I'm looking to see which risk has mitigation plan associated with them. I can just do it right here. Now, the design changes, I didn't enter anything in it. As you can see, the mitigation plan is empty. But if I click on a risk with mitigation plan, you can see that it has a mitigation plan. So there is also the quantitative tab. Now, in the quantitative tab, this is where I associated risk rate WBS item. For example, risk ID 4, right, is associated with the entire project, which is ID 0001. Risk number 10 is associated with WBS item 0030. So these are the ID for the WBS for the schedule, for the items in your schedule. So you can associate a risk with many WBS items, right? So as you can see here, this risk number 1 is associated with 22, 24, 27, and 28. So you use a comma to separate them. So other things you should know is that you can enter all this information in the spreadsheet that I showed you, and the spreadsheet is mapped to match with Primavera Risk Analysis. So when you use that specific spreadsheet, you can easily import your data once you're done working with it, or if you prefer to work outside of Primavera. So another thing you decide in quantitative risk analysis is which risk will be quantified. In other words, which risk you will use in your quantitative analysis. So right now, as you can see, only 3 of the risks were selected. So I might want to select any risk, that has high probability of occurrence, and I know will have an impact on my project, so I can just select them, right? And then, which means that they'll be taken into considerations in my quantitative analysis. Now, I'm going to leave the opportunity. I'm not going to take it, and also I'm going to leave this risk without a probability. Or if I want, I can add a probability for it. I just need to select it and add a probability. I'm going to type, let's say, 25%. That's the probability. So in the quantitative tab, I have a pre-mitigations and also a post-mitigations. So post-mitigations means what happened to the risk after I implement a risk response strategy. Now, I know I have a risk response strategy for this risk, except I did choose not to quantify it, but I certainly can choose to quantify it. I'm gonna use this like that. But for this risk, for example, I need to understand the pre-mitigations probability and the post-mitigations probability. It goes from here 40% to 20%. You can put it even lower if you believe that after your mitigations, the probability has been reduced to 10%. Same as this risk, design change. Pre-mitigations is 60%. Post-mitigations could be only 20%, right? So after you've done all this, pre-mitigations, post-mitigations for that contract delay I entered, I'm going to deal with it now. I'm going to not only quantify it, but I'm also going to say it will be reduced to 15%. Right? Now the question is, what activity that this will impact? I don't think we said that before. Did we decide how we're going to map this? We want to map it to activity 28. So if you type 0, 0, 0, 0, 28, that should work. All right. So that's what we call an impacted plan, because we not only say what happened after we implement a risk response strategy, but also we say how and which part of the project those risks will impact. So that's why in a risk register, whether you're using Excel or whether you're using a specialized software, you always need to tell the software, how the risks you identified relate to different parts of the project. So that's what we're doing right here. Any questions? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this for a moment, right? I'm going to save the register, click on Save Register and Plan. Now, was I going too fast? No? Okay, so that's good. I'm going to save that and I'm going to close it just for a moment, right? So I think you remember what I did when I run this risk analysis before. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run it again. I'm going to click on run risk analysis. And I'm going to click on complete. Okay. Do you see any significant change in my project right here? Now, in order for you to see any of this, you'd have to know what I had before in terms of probability of completions based on the project, based on the risks I had in my project before. So you'd have to know that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, I think we've run this, we've quantified the risk impact in our thing. Let's go back to our register. Let's go back by clicking on risk and register. That's us. Okay, so what is it we didn't do and I didn't talk about before? Remember, you can edit the risk scoring. That's something that you need to remember. You can quantify the risk impact by adding money, right? But you have to do it in the quantitative sections. For example, here, as you can see, if you go to the right, you can take into considerations the total cost impact for a risk. Yeah? You can do that. You can, that's how you quantify a risk, right? And we already know we can edit all the informations based on our project, based on the project we are working on. So that's very important to remember, right? So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to create a risk report, right? So,
Professor, sorry
yes?
to interrupt. I have one question. In mitigation, there is a response, right? We use avoid, transfer, reduce, or accept. So so what does it mean? Means, can you explain it?
What I mean by those strategies?
Response. Yeah, mitigation response.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Now, absolutely, and I think this is an important question. Now, when you use avoid, it means that you can avoid a risk altogether. So when you avoid a risk, it is likely that the probability for it to occur will be 0. For example, if a project, if there is a risk that my software will be riddled of bugs, for example, the way I can avoid to have a lot of bugs in my software is to one way to do it to avoid that is to change my developers. Let's say instead of using junior developers, I'm going to use very high-skilled developers. Another way to do it is to change the scope of my project. For the most part, to avoid a risk, you must change the scope of the project or change the plan to complete the project. So by reducing the complexity of the scope of my software, right, I can avoid the risk of of project delay or of having a lot of bugs to fix in the software. That's avoidance. Now, transfer is when you pass the risks on to someone else. For example, instead of developing software with internal resources, you outsource this with a firm with a great reputation. They're very good. They've created software like that before. Instead of taking the risk, you give them a contract to develop software with a deadline, with penalties if they don't meet it, right? So that's one way to transfer risk to someone else. Or in a project, particularly in construction project, you can take insurance in many cases to transfer some risk. And by having an insurance policy, if something occurs, then the insurance company will reimburse you. So reduce is the same term as mitigate. Mitigate means that you can reduce the probability. You can't avoid the risk. You don't want to transfer it, but you want to take some action, right, to reduce the probability of the risk to occur, or to reduce the impact of the risk if it occurs. And that's what you saw here that we did with the key resource availability risk. We made sure that we change our resource policy to make sure we mitigate that risk, we reduce the probability for that to happen. And accept means that we accept the risk, we're not going to do anything about it. So that's what here, we know the risk exists, we acknowledge it, but we decide not to take any action against it. So when you see accept, you don't see a mitigation plan for it. So that's what, those are the key, the 4 key strategies that are used in risk management. But most recently, project managers start getting involved more and more with strategic managers and PMO directors and portfolio managers. So there is another strategy we call escalate. You know, escalation is that you identify the risk, but also you're not going to do anything about it at the project level, but you're going to send it to the portfolio manager or the PMO director so that they know about the risk and deal with the risk from their end instead of dealing with it yourself at the project level. So this is an uncertainty that matters to the project as a whole or to the organization, but doesn't matter much to the project manager. So instead of dealing with it, the project manager escalates it to someone else. So that's what you are, those are the strategies we call response, mitigation response. So those are
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You will certainly hear a lot about those in your risk management class. Now, any other questions? Okay, so what I wanted you to know before we end is that you can actually create a lot of very good reports in this thing. Once you enter all your informations, you have pre-mitigations and post-mitigations data, you can create reports. For examples here, there is a report manager, all right? And in the report manager, if you select, let's select standard layout, qualitative, we're looking for standard layout report. And this one, I want standard layout, this one, right? And select standard layout qualitative report, right? And let's click on publish, right? So that's give you actually a standard layout qualitative report for your project. It gives you information about your project data, report summary, with risk, with high, medium, low, and negligible. So it's quite a risk by risk report, which is actually would be useful to take a look at the risks you identified and you're going to quantify separately from the project. So that's a very interesting report to create. And it doesn't give you any additional information, but it gives you all the information you were looking at in the risk register in one place. So that's a better way to have a sense of what you're dealing with here in terms of risk, right? So as you can see, any information you entered will be here in this report, right? If you want the report, you can save it, you can write it here. We're going to close it. We're done with this. So that's what we're going to do. The last thing we're going to do before we end is building the impacted risk plan. So once the risks have been mapped to the task, the impacted risk plan can be built for analysis. Now, since you are already here, you probably already have the file open, right? We're going to click on Tools, and we're going to click on Build the Impacted Risk Plan. So we want both. We want the post-mitigated plan and the pre-mitigated plan. So we want both, right? So what we're going to do now, I'm trying to see my screen. I need the bigger screen for this workshop. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to make sure that I select all open risks in this project, because I didn't close any risks yet. And I'm going to click Build, right? And click OK, click OK. Here we go. So I have so I have my impacted risk plan built, right? So it means that now the project take into considerations the risks that I link to it with everything, all the information you entered, right? So what you can do if you want is to run a risk analysis again and see what happened. Click complete on that. And if you noted here, there are some changes. And taking those risks into considerations, as you can see, my deterministic date doesn't have a 2% probability anymore. So taking the risk into considerations, you can see that there are changes in my analysis. So what does that mean exactly? It means that until I have a list of risks identified for my project, entered into the software, and linked to my WES items with pre-mitigations and post-mitigations impact, I don't really know with some level of accuracy or confidence, and that's a better word, that my risk analysis is actually working. So that's actually a complete process for performing risk analysis with any risk analysis software. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard of Crystal Ball, another software that performs risk analysis. The process is practically the same. You need to have a baseline with accurate data, as much as you can find accurate information. And you need to make sure you model uncertainty in the plan by providing range estimates or 3-point estimates, identify risk and associated them with the WES items, and perform your analysis. You can perform your analysis to understand what happens before and after, but this is what you're looking at here using risk analysis with Primavera Risk Analysis. So I hope you know, this is something that's, you know, going to be useful to you. I know if you are actually a project management student, and this is going to be extremely useful. But maybe not if you're not a project management student, it doesn't matter that much. Anyway, so I know many of you have a class to attend. So I'm going to stop here so I can have time to take all your questions before we leave. Questions? Anything you want to ask, you certainly can.
Professor, how do we get to finish date, start date, duration, cost, NPV, IRR?
How do we come to the finish date, start date?
Yes. Yes.
We run, this is called a distribution graph. To have that, you have to.
Yes, that's in front of me.
You have to perform a risk analysis. That's how you come to it. You have to perform a Monte Carlo simulations. And the step to do it is to click on risk and run risk analysis, right?
Correct.
Are you with me? And
yes,
in the show tab, you have to make sure that you have distribution graph selected,
correct.
Right? Because you could have anything else. You could have the tornado graph or the scatter plot or the probabilities cash flow. You have to select this. And then you click analyze, right?
Got it.
Yes. And if you click complete, it will provide you with the distribution graph.
Yes. Good.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. I have a question. So now the maximum or the 100% of the project will be done by May 6, 2024. And the one before mitigation was one month later. It was June 6th. Is this all because of the risk mitigation, purely due to the risk mitigation, or there were other factors that were affecting this distribution?
Well, before we build the impacted risk plan, we didn't link the risk to the WDS item yet. And we didn't build that plan yet. So after building the plan, when we rerun the risk analysis, we see the effect of the risk on the completion date of the project. So what you're looking at here, remember the dates are in French. So the 05/06/2024 is June 5th, not May 6th.
Oh,
the 100%.
So they were only 1 day different. I see. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Now, I would like to know if, now for you, I know, for those who are, taking this workshop right now, it may not make sense for you to take it again, but I know we are going to have new students coming in the winter. We're going to offer that again. And if one of you would like to cover some part of this lessons on my behalf, instead of me speaking the entire time, I'd like, any other students who'd like to run this workshop with me, you can certainly come and participate with me, and I'd be certainly happy to have you. And obviously you have plenty of time to learn a little bit more about the software, and you certainly will be confident on sharing your knowledge about it. Okay. Or any other questions? It looks like we have some questions in the chat. No?
We have a question about the recording, and the response to this question is that we will email to anyone that contact NUPM Boston at Gmail, or contact Nikhil or I, or any NUPM member. We can help you with the recording.
Absolutely. After the sessions, the recording will go straight to Sarah, Prachi, and other NUPM members. They will have access to the recording. Do we have other questions here? So yeah, so one thing to keep in mind is this software works for project risk analysis. It will work also for portfolio analysis, risk analysis, but it will work for anything that for things that have a finite timeline associated with them. So in other words, something with a time to start and a time to finish. By definition, we're talking about projects. So that's one thing to keep in mind here. Any other questions? Okay, well, Sarah will certainly reach out to you and for a survey after the workshop to know what can we do to make this better the next time. And I know from the previous workshop, students wanted me to go slower, which I think I did, but if I have to go even slower in the future, I'll certainly do that, but your feedback will be appreciated. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Professor Alexis. This was an amazing event, especially for the students that have risk management course. This can be very helpful. And also for those that are working with MS Project, I really enjoyed that you said we can check our schedule reports here on Primavera to make sure that all our tasks have like before and after tasks, so that we make sure that all tasks are connected. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Also, if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact NUPM or any questions, any inquiry. We will be more than happy to help. And thank you so much, Professor Alexis. I know that you're also very available, very approachable for all students, and we're so thankful of that.
Absolutely.
Professor?
Yes, please.
Can we attend the class again if there will be this class or workshop again?
Absolutely, anytime. You can attend anytime.
Thank you so much.
Of course.